of God.
A family circus comic strip shows the two boys, Jeff and Billy. They're squabbling over the size of the slices of pie that their mom has placed in front of them. "They aren't the same," Jeff pouts. Mom tries again. She evens up the slices. Still, Jeff is upset. "They still aren't the same," he whines. This time, Mom uses a ruler. She proves without a doubt that both slices of pie are the exact same size. "But Mom," Jeff complains, "I want mine to be just like Billy's, but bigger." In our parable, there are those who put in a hard 12-hour day working in the heat of the sun. At the end of the day, they expected to receive a day's wage, which is what they agreed to. That's what they expected until they saw the workers who had worked only an hour get a full day's wage. Then they expected more. They demanded it from the owner. They were disappointed, envious, even angry with the owner of the land. Their attitude is one that we can relate to. We love God's mercy and grace when it is extended to us, but when God is gracious to others, not so much. This is probably one of the least favorite parables in the New Testament. That is because we misunderstand it. It's not about being fair. Life is not fair. It's about God being more than fair. It's about God's generosity and grace. Apparently, monkeys would not like this parable either. In lots of ways, monkeys are like us. At the University of Atlanta, researchers have been testing capuchin monkeys. They gave them the task of picking up a small granite stone and bringing it to the researcher within 1 minute. If they were successful, they were rewarded with a slice of cucumber. The experiment worked well. It was a happy lab situation as long as each monkey received the same wage. However, this turned sour when the researchers varied the pattern. They tried giving one monkey a grape as his reward. Indignation broke out. First, the other monkeys went on strike. They wouldn't pick up the stone and take it to the researcher. Later, they even took to throwing away the cucumber and the granite stone. It had offended their sense of justice. That's almost human, isn't it? We are happy with our lot until we see someone in a similar situation who's better off. Then we cry foul. We want to go on strike and demand an end to such monkey business. We misunderstand our passage if we see it in terms of economic systems. Jesus' parable is not a statement in favor of communism or socialism because everyone received the same. Those who did not work did not get paid anything. It's not about the lazy worker receiving the same as the industrious employee, nor is this passage a recommendation for business practices. Any business, ancient or modern, would fail if we paid people for 12 times more than they actually worked. That is not the point. The New Testament teaches that we're to work hard for our employees, working as unto the Lord. On the other hand, the scripture teaches that we're to be fair with those who work for us. We should pay others equal pay for equal work, both for women and for men. The Apostle Paul writes, "Treat those who work for you fairly and justly." This parable is not about economic systems or business practices. It is about a generous and gracious God. Perhaps you have known employees who were always looking over their shoulder to make certain if they were working, other people were working. They always want to make sure that they get everything that everybody else gets, and then some. I've worked with people like that. They're always on the lookout to make certain that everything is absolutely fair, which really means, like Jeff said in the cartoon, I want mine to be just like Billy's, only bigger. How much better is the attitude toward work that Yogi Berra had? Yogi was the catcher for the New York Yankees. He loved playing baseball. The Yankees were at their peak and were negotiating contracts with the players for the next year. A group of reporters interviewed players as they emerged from the owner's office. One of them asked Yogi Berra about the terms of his contract. In his characteristic style, he said, "I'm going to get to play baseball again next year for the Yankees, and would you believe it? They're going to pay me besides." That's the right spirit of gainful employment, doing what you love to do, doing it well, and getting paid for it besides. If the workers who had worked all day had this attitude about their work, they wouldn't have resented those who only worked 1 hour and were paid a full day. When you're in the right vocation and you've got the right spirit, the longer you work, the better. God graciously invites us to use our gifts and abilities to the glory of God and for the benefit of others. In the long run, money, recognition, or praise has little to do with it. The truth is that it is a privilege to have the opportunity to work in God's vineyard. In the ancient story of creation in Genesis, humans were created to work in the garden and to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Work is a gift. But even a passion for one's work does not quite get at the depth of this parable. The story is not about justice, it's about grace. Of course, sometimes we would just settle for a little luck. King Duncan tells about a golf tournament in Knoxville, Tennessee, that had a fascinating ending. The last hole was the shortest one, only 90 yards. Part of the tournament was a closest to the pin contest, the closest to the hole. Whoever's shot ended up closest to the hole would win. One man hit a terrible shot. It ricocheted off the scorer's tent, and then it landed on the edge of the green where it hit another golfer's ball and rolled up just to the lip of the cup. Another golfer, meanwhile, hit a beautiful shot. It was heading straight for the pin, actually hit the pin and bounced down and landed 6 inches away from the hole. So who was the winner? The prize did not go to the golfer who made the beautiful straight-on shot. No, the prize went to the man whose shot was so bad, it ricocheted twice before it ended up right next to the hole. I've heard more than one golfer say, "I'd rather be lucky than good." But the grace in our story is more than luck. It was the landowner's generosity to those who only had a chance to work 1 hour or 3 hours or 6 hours instead of the full 12-hour day. Harvesting grapes for 12 hours in the hot sun is backbreaking work. But the issue here is the opportunity that the people had to work. Every time the landowner went back into town, he found people who had not been hired, people who wanted to work, people who had the same needs as those who had already been hired. A person who grew up in a migrant family wrote about our passage. She pointed out that most middle-class and wealthy Americans miss an important point of the story. All the workers had been in the marketplace all day trying to get hired. They had been standing around all day just hoping that someone would employ them. She said she had seen her parents go through something similar. One year they traveled to a farm hoping to find work, but the farm already had all the workers they needed. Then on to another farm with the same results. Then another. She said they were not hired because the farmers had already filled their quota of workers. It was so discouraging. It was not due to any fault on the part of her parents. They were simply not given an opportunity to work. When we lived in Miami, south of Miami in Cutler Bay, men looking for work used to hang out near the Home Depot. People knew that if they needed laborers, all they had to do was go there to find people who were willing to work. The laborers knew that if people were picking up hardware, tools, or lumber, they might want help. I remember seeing a guy in a Ford F-150 pickup truck. He stopped to talk to two of the workers. After a couple minutes, the guys jumped into the back of his truck, and he took off with them to the job. Others stayed by the road, hopeful that someone else would give them a chance. The passage says, God knows that we are all in need. God sees the big picture, and God's grace is extended to all. We recognize that some do not have the same opportunities as others. Compared to most people in the world, you and I have had many more opportunities. Most of us had good parents who cared for us and provided for our needs. We had business and educational opportunities that 90% of the world would envy. In this country, because some of us are white and because English is our first language, we've had more opportunities than people of color or persons from other cultures. Some of us have been raised in church. We've had spiritual opportunities that others have not had. Do we deserve more blessings from God than others? No. Do those of us who have served in the church, clergy, and laity get a greater reward? Yes, we do. It's the reward of working in God's vineyard longer. Our parable teaches us that we are blessed to be able to labor in God's service and to live in the presence of our gracious God. Not all have the same opportunities, but we all have the same basic needs. The Greek word denarius in our passage was the usual day's wage. It was the minimum amount of money that a small family would need to buy food for the day and nothing more. The owner knew that those hired last did not have the same opportunity to work all day. He also knew that they needed that daily wage as much as the ones that he hired at the beginning of the day. Their families needed to eat as much as the other workers' families needed to eat. Or else they might have to scrounge for food in the garbage dumps, which some people still do every day in many places in the world. So the owner of the vineyard was generous and gracious. It's a picture of God. God blesses all of us with what we need. Before God, we all have the same needs: to be forgiven, to be accepted, to be loved. We understand that God created us for a relationship with God and for relationships with others. There's a play by Timothy Thompson based on this parable. He depicts two brothers vying for work. John is strong and capable. Philip is just as willing, but has lost a hand in an accident. When the landowner comes, John is taken in the first wave of workers. As he labors in the field, he looks up the road for some sign of Philip. Other workers are brought to the field throughout the day, but Philip is not among them. John is grateful to have the work, but feels empty knowing that Philip needs the money just as much as he does. Finally, the last group of workers arrives and Philip is with them. John is relieved to know that Philip will get to work for at least an hour. But as the drama unfolds and those who came last get a full day's wages, John rejoices, knowing that Philip, his brother, will have the money necessary to feed his family. When it comes his turn to stand before the landowner and receive his pay, instead of complaining as the others, John throws out his hand and says, "Thank you. Thank you, my Lord, for what you've done for us today." Grace arises out of a sense of community in which we see the 11th hour workers as our brothers and sisters. Their needs are every bit as important as ours. God goes beyond being fair. God is gracious, generous, and compassionate toward us all. Thanks be to God. Amen.